Hey, stay-at-home mom family. It's your mom mentor and caregiver coach, Melissa. Happy Monday. Welcome to episode 5, excuse me, of the Caregiver Coffee Chat with podcast with my special guest at Dr. Jackie Kickish. Jackie is a licensed physical therapist as well as having training being a pre and post corrective exercises instructor and trainer. So I am very excited about having Jackie with me on the podcast today because physically our health is very important to us, both as a mom and as a spousal caregiver. And I really resonated with Jackie's story when we were planning this podcast episode for you guys because I'm 3 years postpartum and I had complications in my pregnancy. And even 3 years postpartum, I'm still having some physical challenges with that. And I wish I would have found Jackie years ago when I was actually in my postpartum recovery, because with a cesarean, there's a lot of internal surgery scarring that goes along with that. And you lose a lot of your core strength from having a cesarean and just being pregnant. And for those of you listening who may have had complications with your birth as well, there's trauma there. And so obviously, if we're not careful and we don't know what we don't know about taking care of ourselves physically, we could do more damage and more harm than good with our recovery. And so I invited Jackie on to tell us all about the things about what we can do to maintain our physical health, because it's very important to us as moms, but also if you're a spousal caregiver like me, it's very important that you take care of yourself, because I've already had a chronic back injury from my professional healthcare career. And like I said, with the backstory on my own postpartum recovery, I don't want that to be you guys. So welcome, Jackie. Thank you for being a guest on the podcast today.
Hi, of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Jackie, for those of us, or excuse me, for our listeners who may not be acquainted with your work and who you are, could you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about what you do and your story and how you came to this passion of sharing your story and
Yeah.
leveraging that story to help women with their physical health?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me. Yes. So my name is Jackie. I'm a mom of 3 little ones, including twins, physical therapist, and certified pre and postnatal exercise specialist. I've been a physical therapist for a little over 13 years now. So I have always been very passionate about health and fitness. However, after becoming a mom, after the birth of my twins, which that was my first pregnancy, I feel like everything changed. Everything that I really knew regarding fitness and exercise was just completely different after having my twins. Um, and so, long story short, that is kind of what has really shifted my passion into, helping moms postpartum safely return to exercise, restoring their core and pelvic floor. I haven't told very many people this, but I did suffer a small umbilical hernia myself when
Ooh.
I was 10 to 11 months postpartum after my twins. I did not have my certification in pre and postnatal exercise at the time. I received that certification about a year and a half ago. So unfortunately back then, almost 6 years ago, I didn't know what I didn't know. And, I obviously did not lay down a strong foundation. I was almost a year postpartum. I thought I was fine. And I was basically doing exercises I probably should not have been doing. I know better now. But unfortunately, that was a result of, not laying down a strong foundation. Even a year postpartum, I think a lot of us think like, oh, okay, if I'm a year or two after having a baby, I'm fine, but that definitely was not the case. So it was also kind of through my own mistakes and injury that has also led me to, I don't want other moms to obviously to do the same thing. I don't want them to suffer. I want them to be able to really safely return to exercise.
Right. And I think that's so important too, because the other component of this too is we all have unique journeys and we all have unique bodies. And so what
Right.
works for you or I maybe not 100% will work for someone else, and they may not have the exact same experience either. They might have similar
Right.
complications or similar issues and symptoms with their pregnancy or
Yeah.
postpartum recovery journey. But I think the other problem is too is like since the medical system lots of times is just streamlined to a one fits all kind of broad approach, it really
Yeah.
takes the individualism out of it of our unique experiences. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like, I think my postpartum like checkup at the doctor was like around 4 or 5 weeks, because I did not have a C-section. I think if it's a C-section, it's a little bit later. But a lot of women, they get that green light, they get the okay from the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's just not very much support and education, I feel like, for postpartum moms. That's also what made me realize, like, okay, there needs to be a lot more education, for us moms, because a lot of us, again, we get that green light at the 4 to 6 week, postpartum checkup, and we think we're okay to kind of resume, normal activities. And that's definitely not the case.
No, especially, and I think that's really important to drive home too, guys, if you're listening, that especially if you have trauma. Like I had mass gestational diabetes in my pregnancy. I started having extra amniotic fluid at 32 to 33 weeks
Okay.
gestation pregnancy, and
Yeah.
then I was measuring 2 weeks ahead, of where I should be for the
Okay.
rest of my pregnancy. So by the time, and
Okay.
I was just so swollen. So I was huge. I was 220 pounds.
Yeah.
I'm only 5 foot tall. So I was 220 pounds by
Yeah.
the time I gave birth, and we took
Okay.
our daughter at 39 weeks gestation because of the complications. So
Yeah.
it was complicated, but you don't know what you don't
Don't
know. And
know
I, and I,
exactly
and then,
until
so
you
then
go
I,
through it.
exactly. So that I had a cesarean, and it's major surgery. I don't think people understand that a cesarean is major surgery. They have to cut
It
through so
is.
many layers of your body to even get to the
Yes.
organs, to move the organs, and then be able to get the
Yes.
baby out. So there's a lot of, like, I know for me being 3 years, almost 4 years, because our daughter turns 4 in January, being almost 4 years postpartum. Oh my gosh! I
Yeah.
mean, my incision site is still sensitive, and I still have issues to this
Really.
day.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think it's just important to be aware of that. Trauma to your body, it doesn't happen
Yes.
or recover in a matter of minutes, in a matter of hours, in a
Right.
matter of months, and it could, and there's no set amount of years. When something
Right.
traumatic happens to your body, it's lifelong, and
Yes.
you need to nurture it and take care of it so it doesn't get worse. But like you said, the problem with the medical system is that you get the green light, so to speak, at 4 to 6 weeks postpartum to resume your activities, but they don't give you any information about how to nurture
Yeah.
yourself and ease into it gradually
Right.
to help your
Yes.
body continue to recover in a way that is necessary for your unique situation, but also not exasperate it and make it worse and then end up with another injury. Because as a
Right.
mom, it's physical. As a caregiver, it's physical. I know for me, when I was professionally in healthcare, I worked with elderly and dementia patients. So I was physically
Yeah.
taking care of patients that were bedridden and could no longer walk or stand pivot much on their own. So I was using
Yeah.
my body physically a lot.
Yeah.
And so when I suffered a back injury, I was out for a month, and I went through
Wow.
physical therapy as well. And
Yeah.
by the time I recovered, my physical therapist said, okay, you are to the point where you can go back to work. But I just want to warn you that if you injure this spot again, you probably will be in a worse injury and situation. So maybe surgery or something. I was lucky I did not need surgery with this
Oh,
particular
wow.
injury, but it's still,
Yeah.
it's fragile. Once you do something to your body, it's never the same again. It's not as strong as it
Right.
was
Yes.
before the trauma happened, whether it's a back injury, whether it's complications in your pregnancy or complications in your birth. Either
Yeah.
way, either way, it's so
Yes.
important that you are aware of the trauma and that you
Yes.
educate yourself on the appropriate steps that work for you in not making the trauma worse. And that makes me so
Yeah.
frustrated as women and other moms out there, is that for those who don't have a background in physical therapy like yourself, or don't have a background in 15 years of healthcare, of being trained to understand body mechanics,
Right.
that they're just being pushed out of the medical office postpartum without any
Yeah,
knowledge of this stuff. And it's really setting them up for a disaster. I mean, even just something as
it
picking up
is.
your child, which let's face it, my daughter was 12 pounds when she was born. So, even just picking up 12 pounds of weight the wrong way, you could do some damage. And it could
Especially
mean
after a C-section. Yes.
exactly. So it could mean another surgery. It could mean long-term chronic pain. It could mean a hernia, like what you experienced with your twins. So I think it's just so not okay that we don't talk about this and bring it into the limelight of how women can be better acknowledged, or excuse me, better have more knowledge about how they can take care of themselves and advocate for themselves. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah, to
what
not suffer in silence, in other words. Because a lot of
absolutely.
clients I see, they have, leakage, back pain, and they've been dealing with it for years,
Oh,
honestly. And it's really sad. It's like that should not be the case.
yeah. So what so you shared a little bit earlier in our conversation about your own journey and your own experience. So what really motivated you to create a business out of this? Was it just really out of your sole desire to educate women better, to be aware that this situation does happen and to prevent another mom from going through this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was partly of my own, postpartum journey and recovery. And it was also, talking with a lot of other moms in some of the mom groups that I'm in. I was just hearing a lot of the same thing over and over and over again. And just kind of realizing that, people may not be talking a lot about it, like out in society and, at the doctor's office, but a lot of women, difficulty having finding time to exercise, finding time to eat healthier, just because really everything changes after becoming a mom. And so, yeah, so it was kind of mostly my own journey, but just, listening to other moms and just really realizing that this is definitely a very big need.
Right. Which I think is so interesting is that there's so many things that we go through in our life. And when we're going through something that's hard or that we just don't know what to do, being around like-minded people is so important. That's the whole reason my
Yeah,
business exists. I went through my own journey of just feeling isolated and alone and overwhelmed with quitting my career cold turkey to take care of my sick spouse and then and just adjusting to being a stay-at-home mom, which I had not planned on doing. There's
yeah,
resources I could find for stay-at-home moms who had made that pre-planned choice with their spouse because they made good income to take care of their children
yeah,
and have one parent be at home, which is fine. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But
yeah,
what about if you're thrust into an unexpected situation where you don't have the support and it is cold turkey
right.
and you don't know what to do? And same thing for you. I'm sure that was very scary for you when you were you tried to educate with what knowledge is out there and resources are out there about postpartum and pregnancy. I mean, we all do it, right? The books,
Yeah,
what to expect when you're expecting,
yeah,
all those
yeah,
things. But still, there's that gray area of a lot of information that is not out
right.
there. And I know,
Yeah,
speaking from my journey, even though it's different, but still similar, of that situation of being thrust into a situation where you're not educated, you can't find any resources about how to navigate this new season, and you can't find those like-minded people to be able to even just ask the simple question of, have you been through this situation? What do I
yeah,
do?
yeah,
And then from the caregiver standpoint, I mean, the average person, not everyone's a trained physical therapist like you, and not everyone's a former certified nursing assistant like me. So they
yeah,
don't even know how the system works or what questions to ask to be able to advocate for themselves.
right.
So, what would be three top symptoms that you would recommend women be aware of in their postpartum journey that might be a red flag that they really need to start advocating for themselves to see um, a physical therapist and take their care beyond just the general, MD or OBGYN, because
Yeah,
they see and they feel that something's off, something's not right.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So the first one I would say is urinary leakage. This is a very common symptom that women have postpartum, but it is not normal. Unfortunately, I've heard from a lot of people where even their OBs have kind of just brushed it off. Well, you're a mom now, you had a baby, it's normal, which is kind of scary, but it's not normal. It is common, but I just want to make that point. It is definitely not normal. So urinary leakage, if you are having a lot of like back pain, pelvic pain, hip pain, that is something that you definitely would want to see a pelvic PT for, as well, especially if it's ongoing, if it's not getting better, things like that. That usually means there's, certain muscles that are very tight and then other muscles that are very weak. And that's contributing to a lot of that hip and pelvic pain. So there's definitely a lot of, great exercises that can help with that once they kind of get to the root of the problem as to why they're having that. And then also I would recommend definitely to check yourself for an abdominal separation, also known as a diastasis recti. Fun fact, 100% of women have it at their due date. So it is like a natural splitting of the abdominal wall. And at about 6 weeks postpartum, 60% of women still have it. So some women will experience, spontaneous healing of that abdominal separation, but a lot of women will not. So it's recommended that at about 6 weeks postpartum that you do assess yourself for an abdominal separation. And that's definitely something that physical therapy can help with.
So what would be the symptoms for, would it be some of the similar symptoms for like, that you would say that might be a red flag that you need to see a physical therapist and take it beyond an MD, or is I'm not going to even try to repronounce that
An abdominal separation?
An abdominal separation. Yeah. Thank you. Are the symptoms similar or are they different? Would you be able to
So some women do have back pain when they have an abdominal separation, but that is something that there's a specific test that you do. You basically, you lie down on your back with your knees bent up. You take your 2 fingers, the width of your fingers, and you're basically you find the belly button and you go up and down the midline to see if there is any gap or soft and squishiness in that entire midline. So you can have an abdominal separation above the belly button, at the belly button, and below the belly button. So I would recommend for people to, check that when they're at least 6 weeks postpartum.
Awesome.
So that's something that you kind of feel. The doctor can also, test for an abdominal separation. But that's definitely something that, you don't want, that certain exercises could make it worse. So that's why we definitely want to improve that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like you don't know what you don't know. And so I want my moms who are listening to be able to get a clear understanding of what are the red flags? What are the symptoms? It's not talked about. If it's not talked about, people don't know what they don't know. So what would your third tip be for that could be a red flag sign that something's going on with my postpartum recovery and I need to address it for my physical health?
So besides, the leakage, the back and hip pain, abdominal separation, I'm trying to think what else. I would also say sometimes people have issues with like going to the bathroom. So like the urgency of urination, and then sometimes like even completely emptying the bladder. That's also, definitely a red flag. Constipation is a red flag. That's putting a lot of added stress and strain as well on your pelvic floor, which we definitely do not want postpartum.
Interesting. I'm glad you said that. I'm just going to be a guinea pig here because that is something I've struggled with since I had my daughter. Is I constantly feel like I need to. I don't have trouble with constipation per se, but I've struggled with constantly feeling like I need to go to the bathroom or like I'm not done. I'm not done urinating. Just to be brutally honest, I'm just going to put it out there because someone needs to hear. So that is totally me. That makes sense. I've wondered why that has been such an increased symptom since I've had my daughter.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I know what I need to do now. Can I book a call with you?
Yes.
But seriously, for those of you listening, I share that because that might be you. I want you to feel like, like it's okay. Okay. We're going to go on this podcast, guys. I'm really all about intentional conversations where we really get to the root of these experiences, right? And if me even being perfectly honest and putting it out onto the internet here helps you, I want that to be the case. Okay. If that is you, if you're struggling with that, let's both be accountable and set up an appointment with our physical therapist and go, hey, I've been dealing with
Yeah.
this. It's been ongoing. I mean, I can still live my life, but it's just kind of annoying. Can I
Yeah.
be tested to be sure that there's not another underlying physical issue going on, so it does not impact my journey and my role as a mom and as a caregiver
Yeah.
and as a wife, because that is very important. Like, again, going back to the whole thing, self-care is not a buzzword. It's not selfish, but it's
Right.
beyond going. But listen, self-care goes beyond just getting a massage or going to the
Right.
spa or going out for
Yeah.
coffee. It is so much more than that, guys. It is really important that you listen to your body. Okay. What works for you may not 100% work for somebody else. And there's resources. Okay. This podcast, I'm going to jam pack it full of resources for you. So you know what questions to ask. So you know what resources you can tap into, because as moms,
Yeah.
we're stressed out. As caregivers, we're stressed out. And if you don't know what like-minded people to be around, it's a house of cards. You're not going to be able to handle it. And that is not okay for me as your mom mentor and your coach. So I really want you to be
Yeah.
okay and normalize that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask for help. And if something like this has happened, look at me. I'm almost 4 years postpartum. I didn't know either. I'm learning right alongside you on this call, having this intentional, amazing conversation with Jackie, because I want to educate myself as well. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't have all the answers. And that's the whole point of this is let's come together, guys, and learn and listen to our bodies and pay attention and then advocate and take those 15 minutes of intentional steps each day in whatever we need to do to keep ourselves physically healthy, mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, because that really is how we are going to be able to cope long term as a mom, as a caregiver, and also be able to show up in our marriages, right? Too. And Jackie, this is, I know we didn't initially talk about this, but this is on my heart and I want to go there.
Yeah.
So, with damage to your body physically from trauma, from a said
Mm.
pregnancy, from a said birth, if you're physically your body's not okay, so can that definitely impact your intimacy level as well, like physically, like making if you have damage to your pelvic floor or you're having an abdominal separation, can it impact your intimacy relationship with your spouse? Could it make intimacy more uncomfortable than normal?
Yes, yes, it definitely can. So, for those who have, there is a difference with our pelvic floor between a tight pelvic floor, what we call a hypertonic pelvic floor, versus a low tone or weaker pelvic floor. So, with those people that have a tighter pelvic floor, sex can actually be painful. So, so yeah, so it definitely can affect, the intimacy. As well as definitely, I think, just the changes that your body went through during
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy and then giving birth, as well, just like from a mental standpoint for us. Again, I think when we get that green light at 4 to 6 weeks, that's like the last thing on our mind,
Right, right.
right? but but yeah, but for our spouses, it's
Yeah.
different. But yeah, so I mean, definitely yes, pelvic floor, we call it dysfunction, meaning the pelvic floor is not functioning properly as it should.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely can affect intimacy. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just want to
Yeah.
go there. I think it's so
Yeah.
important that it's okay to ask these questions, guys, because intimacy is a form of communication I mean, I'm not a sex therapist or anything else, so disclaimer here. I'm just throwing that out into the universe, guys, but still it is important to our marriage, right? Our
Right.
intimacy is God designed it, gave it to us, right? As human beings that, intimacy, sex is a way that we show our significant other that we love them, and it is a special, sacred thing that we are able to have with our relationships. But there's no shame in if it's uncomfortable from the physical standpoint because of a said trauma to your body after having a pregnancy with
Right.
complications or a birth with complications and trauma. It's okay to be able to say, and if you're a spouse listening to this too, Just give your significant other some grace, and be okay and be open to having that conversation. Because I'm sure if they love you, they will support you. Like, I did not know, because they don't know either. Okay, men don't know
Right.
either.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more to it than just whether you're in the mood or not. Okay, there's more. There's more to it. Yes, we do need to be intentional and nurture that aspect of our relationship. But if there's something physically wrong to where it's painful and we can't enjoy it, and it causes us to maybe even just feel pain later, like in the moment we're fine, but then later we have chronic pain, or we're feeling discomfort with our
Yeah.
bowel or bladder, or just in our abdominal wall, whatever the case may be. That needs to be addressed, because we want you holistically to be able to show up in your relationship as a partner, or a wife, or a mom and a caregiver. Okay, and I just want to say too, like, just
Yeah.
because your spouse is sick doesn't mean that you aren't intimate either. So it's so important that you still nurture this
Yeah.
aspect of your life. I know it's not a fun topic to talk about, but I think it's still an
Yeah.
important and necessary topic to talk about, because there's multiple levels of trauma. And I think it's important that we heal, we want to heal you so you can show up as the
Right.
mom and wife and caregiver that you want to be, but it trickles into your relationships. Is the other piece I'm getting now, is that it trickles into your other relationships, particularly with your spouse. So how can
Right.
you holistically make sure that your physical health is on point for you, but also for your spouse, for your
Yeah.
relationships, or even with your children too? Let's take it there, right, Jackie? Like, even
Yeah.
just being able to, if your daughter or your son comes up to you and they want to be hugged and picked up, or play or something, it's kind of hard to be able to show up in that capacity that you want to be if you're in pain and you can't go outside and go
Right.
on a walk, or if you can't go outside and play with your kids, if you can't just even pick them up if they're feeling sick or they get hurt and they're just
Yeah.
needing mommy to tell them that they're okay. I know
Yeah.
that would drive me crazy if I was not able to pick up my daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, she's almost 40 pounds now,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to be able to do that much longer. But still, just being
Yeah.
able to do that with her, or even just being able to
Right.
go outside and run and play with her, that's the other
Yeah.
component of this. So physical health is really, really important, guys. It's so important. Okay, so let's see. I'm like eyeballing my questions here. So what are 3 tips that you would want to give our listeners if they need to improve their physical health? Now, we talked about the signs, so let's talk about some proactive steps. Let's keep it down to a nutshell, to where so they're not overwhelmed. Because let's face it, when we know there's a
Okay.
problem, we
Yeah.
can definitely overthink and go, oh gosh, I need to research, I need to, that is not,
Yeah.
we don't want to create analysis paralysis here. We want to be
Yeah.
motivating our listeners to take action for their physical
Yeah.
health. So what are 3 tips that you would give, like to give our listeners,
Yeah.
that they could do in 15 minutes or less, just to get the ball going?
Yeah. So, number one, I would, like we talked about a little bit earlier, truly realizing that self care is not selfish and that you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
That took me a while to realize after the birth of my twins. And so I think, from a mental aspect of just really realizing that we have to make ourselves a priority, our health, our physical and our mental health a priority and not an option, I think is definitely step number one, especially for, new caregivers or moms postpartum. Number two, especially if you're, wanting to get back into exercise and kind of taking more care of your physical health, I would say to make a plan, sit down, write a plan up, and try and stick to it. So a lot of times what I do is, sitting down on Sunday before the week begins and looking at my schedule, because every week, is obviously different with everything that we have going on, and just trying to find like small pockets of time, for self-care and for exercise, and literally writing it down in your calendar, or if you have a digital calendar, putting it in your phone, and literally making that time for yourself to take care of you, whether it's, a 15-minute walk or a 20-minute workout, or maybe you want to read for self-care, something like that. To definitely put it in your schedule, because I think we all know if we don't write it down and we don't plan it, it's most likely not going to happen. So we definitely have to be proactive in that, where we put it in our calendar and, make it happen. Step number three, or tip number three, I would say, is to really give yourself grace and ask for help when you need it. I think this is very difficult step for a lot of us. We don't want to be a burden to someone else. We don't want to ask for help from someone else, from our community or our friends or our neighbors. And I think, if we don't do that, if we don't ask for help, we'll quickly realize that we cannot do it all, and we're going to be burnt out really, really, really quickly. So, definitely asking for help and finding a mentor, with whatever you need. If you're having pelvic floor and core issues, make sure you find a coach or mentor in that specialty, or anything else. Just making sure that you can find someone who's educated to guide you so that you can have the best results.
Absolutely. And I love it that you touched on even just planning. That is a form of self-care because, your body can physically feel stress, right?
Right.
And so you want to keep, guys, listen up. Okay. We're going to really get deep here. Listen up. Stress can be felt in your body, and you want to keep your stress to a low roar as a mom and as a caregiver, because when you keep it to a low roar, you feel better, you can function, you can show up, and in turn, your family doesn't feel that. Because they pick up, especially your small kiddos. I have an almost 4-year-old, guys. They can pick up on when you're stressed and when you're angry. So we want to keep it to a low roar. Now, I'm not saying that you can't feel angry or frustrated. We have those moments. But how do you deal with it? Self-care. All right. So do you like to journal? Do you like to read? Like Jackie was saying, do you need a coach or a mentor to talk to you, not enough coffee yet, guys, to talk to, or tea, if you want tea, to talk to help you come up with a plan that's realistic to your journey. Okay. Do you need to really look at damage to your physical health from, again, the whole topic of this call, a said pregnancy, a said birth? What do you need to do to get your calendar cleaned up to where you can have time for you and you're not overwhelmed with analysis and paralysis? Because here's the thing. We need to know what's coming. I know for me, for some people, I like to use Google Calendar, and I set custom alerts, and they're constantly going off on my phone. Now my phone is on mute because I don't want to trigger my husband or my daughter because she's little when she naps, and my husband has epilepsy, so I don't want him to go into a seizure maybe from all the noise. But for me, that helps. I do better when I know a day in advance what's coming down the pipeline. So for example, even this podcast call, I had an alert in my phone. Don't forget, I have a podcast recording tomorrow at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Boom. And then I do better with repetition. So I do use, for my schedule, I use Google Calendar, and I color code. It helps. But then also, guys, too, if you need a planner, I have a planner too, or a calendar. So again, and it goes back to finding a healthy balance of what works for you, because that's what we talk about here, on this podcast, the Caregiver Coffee Chat, finding a healthy balance with X, Y, and Z. So finding a healthy balance with your physical health. What works for you in terms of low impact exercise? What works for you in terms of where you're at right now with getting the support you need, be it coach, mentor, seeing a physical therapist, seeing your MD? Where do you need to amp up on that? And with your schedule, do you prefer digital? Do you prefer paper? Do you like both, like what I do? There's no right or wrong answer. I just want to get you curious about taking 15 minutes today to get intentional with prioritizing your self-care. Because when you show up with taking care of yourself, you can be able to take care of your kids, you can take care of your spouse. And if you're a mompreneur like what Jackie and I are, we can take care of our clients better. Okay. So it really is, it's like a web. Think of it like a web. Like everything is interconnected, and it's so important. Jackie, let me back up a little bit. So, where can people find you if they're curious about working with you or wanting to know more about your work?
Yes, so you can follow me here on Instagram at Dr. Jackie Kickish. I'm also on Facebook, Dr. Jackie Kickish, and then I also have a private Facebook group called the Healthy Mama Huddle, where I share recipes, workouts, fitness tips, and a lot of other things. So you can always join my free Facebook group.
Awesome. And then what is a free or paid offer that you have right now, that besides, do you have anything else beyond your Facebook group or your socials that you would like to let our listeners know about?
Yeah, definitely. So I have both. I have a free resource called 6 Exercises Every Mom Should Be Doing Postpartum, even if you hate exercising. So I would love, yeah.
I love that.
So I would love to share that free resource, of course, with your community and listeners. And then I just reopened my signature program, which is called Mama's Core Connection. It is a 10-week online program specifically for moms postpartum to help re-strengthen their core, improve their abdominal separation, stop peeing their pants, and decrease any hip or back pain you may have, so you can feel stronger and more confident in your postpartum body. I do have both one-on-one and group coaching options available. And so this is, I love this program, obviously, because, it's really different than anything else out there. A lot of other programs will give you the same generic abdominal exercises that you can find on Google or Pinterest. But my program is really a customized full body approach program. So I do believe it has to be customized to the person, just like we talked about earlier, because everyone has different issues and symptoms postpartum. It's not really a one size fits all approach. So that's definitely something that I'm, very passionate about and definitely believe in.
And
So,
I'm so excited that you said the not the cookie cutter one size fits all approach, because that's what I love about my program too. Is that we're really being intentional with being able to advocate for women of saying, hey, what works for you may not work for me, but here's some tools and resources to at least get the creative juices flowing, of being
right.
curious about what is your secret sauce for success as a mom, and a caregiver, or whatever your situation may be, right?
Yeah.
What works for us may not 100% work for you, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that we still can't help you. Okay.
Right.
Again, we can be
Yeah.
as coaches, we have the benefit of, um, being that like-minded person and mentor and coach for somebody else, but at the same time giving them the freedom, which makes us different than lots of other programs out there, that isn't that one size fits all cookie cutter approach. And I think that's why women get so frustrated too, is they think they have a problem there and they don't have education under the belt to know where to even start, what questions to ask, and they're
Right.
just desperate. They're just desperate to
Yeah.
find a solution to their problem, but the said problem that, or the said solution that they're trying, or multiple solutions that they're trying, are one size fits all. They're saying that with that claim of like, if you do X, Y, and Z, you will get to A, B, and C. Whereas
Yeah.
I think we really need to open up the conversation of saying, listen, you're dealing with X, Y, and Z. Okay, here's three resources that might be able to help you. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. So I really want to encourage you who are listening, is that whether it's caregiving or motherhood, or whether it's your physical health, dealing with post birth, post pregnancy complications, that it's okay to tweak what resources you find. You are not set in stone that you have to do it
Right.
exactly to a T how we teach you. Okay.
Yeah.
Take the idea here, guys, is we want to give you resources. Okay. We're trying to give you resources. And then what we want you to do is take decisive action and tweak it into a way that makes sense to you. Okay. And there is no right or wrong way. We all have unique brains. Okay. What works for me will not 100%, I guarantee you, work for Jackie, and vice versa. And that is fine. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So, Jackie,
Yeah.
one question I want to end this call with is,
Yeah.
what is something that we have talked about in our conversation today, or maybe even in your journey as a mompreneur, as a mom struggling with her own postpartum health, that has really inspired you in your overall journey?
Um, oh gosh, just one thing. Okay, I will try.
You can
I
do
would
multiples.
probably say,
I say at least one. Okay, it has to be at
yeah,
least one, but it can be
yeah.
multiple.
No, I would definitely say, based on our conversation, being an advocate for your own health. And, you know, unfortunately, like I said, I've had clients, I've had other, even like fitness trainers that I've been on their podcast, their doctor, even their OBs, literally just like wipe it underneath the rug. Like, it's no big deal that you're peeing your pants down to your knees when you exercise. That,
Oh,
again, that's not
that's
normal.
horrible.
So I would really just, really be an advocate for your health and don't take no for an answer. if you're brushed off, maybe that's a sign you need to find a different doctor. I'm just kind of surprised by how many people are coming to me saying that, my doctor didn't do anything. They didn't write a prescription for pelvic floor PT, even though I'm having these issues. I felt like something was wrong. They didn't even check me for a diastasis recti or an abdominal separation. And so, really just being an advocate for your own health, I think is definitely huge, and not suffering in silence. We should not be suffering in silence with these symptoms that are a red flag, that
Mm-hmm.
are, they may be common, but they are not normal.
Okay.
And
I
they need to be
love that.
addressed.
Yeah. That brings to mind another question. Because I just thought of it. And because I think someone needs to know. So you mentioned that, you've had experiences where your clients have unfortunately had the experience where they've tried to advocate for themselves with their MD or their nurse practitioner, whoever their medical professional is, but they haven't written a script for a pelvic floor PT. So is that the only way that one can go about getting pelvic floor PT, is that they have to have a standing order from their doctor, or is there another way
Um,
that they could, because like we just said, if they already go to their doctor and they're not, and
yeah,
they're just pushing it under the floor, and they're not listening and saying
yeah,
to them, saying, hey, I'm trying to advocate for myself here, there's a
yeah,
problem.
right,
um that might I know
yeah,
for me that might kind of give me a little bit of a like, ugh, okay, one
yeah,
doctor pushed me under the rug. I'm not so keen on maybe trying to go to another doctor and getting a second opinion, because I'm not trusting, because I've seen how the medical
yeah,
system works, that they will
yeah,
necessarily do something. I'm not saying all doctors or
yeah,
nurses are like that,
right,
guys, but
right.
still,
Of course, they're not. Yeah.
what could someone do? Would you have to?
So I would say, if you go to your OB and you're having these issues and they're not really doing very much, you can always talk to your primary care doctor. And then depending on the state that you are in, some insurances allow what they call direct access, where you do not need a script or like a written order from a physician to go see a physical therapist.
Gotcha.
But again, it definitely depends on the state. So, if you want to go through insurance, you'll definitely need to check, with your insurance plan, because obviously every insurance plan is different. But a lot of states, especially since, a lot of physical therapists now have their doctorate degree, we kind of know, like, if we see someone in direct access, let's say, who hasn't seen their doctor first, we know what red flags there are to
Hmm.
refer them back to a specialist or a doctor if they're not making progress with physical therapy in general. But yeah, so there is that direct access for physical therapy,
Okay.
depending on your
Well,
plan.
okay. Well, and I have a question, because I personally have Medicaid. My family's on Medicaid, and I know other people, who are in situations like this that are on Medicaid.
Yeah,
So, and obviously state to state there's rules that apply, but would the
yeah.
same rules apply for people on Medicaid or people without insurance?
I am not sure. Without insurance, it might be paying out of pocket
Okay.
per visit. I am not really sure. It really depends on the outpatient, physical therapy clinic, and then, what state you're in as to those
Okay.
rules and laws. So,
Yeah. Same thing probably with
yeah,
Medicaid too, right?
yeah,
Okay. All right.
yeah,
So well, I just want to throw it out there, because, I want people
yeah,
to be able to have a clue, at least as jumping start, about what questions to ask with their insurance, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, personalized insurance, that they have independently, maybe through their spouse's work or whatever.
yeah,
I want them to know what kind of questions to ask. And that's something else I want to say too, guys, like whenever you're filing for a program with the state or the government, the federal government obviously is a little different, but for state to state, just be aware that you might have to jump through some hoops, and that your
yeah,
mother-in-law in one state may not have to jump through the same hoops that you have to do in
right,
your state. Every state is different, unfortunately. If there's anything
yeah,
I've learned with our journey for getting on Medicaid, for dealing with my husband's SSD, things like that, there is just so many
so
different,
much.
there's so many little pockets of
Yeah,
information and details that they do look for, and it does, and it's not streamlined. It really is not streamlined. So do your research. Call your health and welfare office with your state would be a good place to start. I would say call most insurance companies. For those of you who are clueless with insurance, look on the back of your insurance cards and call those numbers and just ask questions. Try to explain. Like the other day, I had a question about my husband's medication, and I had no clue to what to ask for. Called the customer service line, and they directed me to the medications department. So so don't feel overwhelmed or intimidated. At least call the main line of those numbers, and then explain the situation, and then they can probably direct you to the right department that you're needing to have your question asked. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, so because I know it's overwhelming. No one likes to talk about the jumping through the hoops of insurance and
Yes.
and
A lot of
medical
hoops.
forms. That's
Yes.
that's not the fun part. I mean, it's easy to say like, oh,
Right.
I need to see my doctor or my OB about X, Y, and Z, but it's not fun when you're having
Right.
to deal with all the forms and jump through all the hoops for the requirements for the programs and things like that.
Yeah.
So don't feel
Yeah.
bad. You're not the only one, okay? I'm not saying that it's easy or that it's fun, but
Right.
it is possible. Okay, guys, it is possible. So, and it's important that
Yeah.
you do that, okay? And if you have questions, Jackie and I both have personally had to do that. So feel free to just DM us or send us an email if you have questions about some of that stuff and just want some direction on what to do. So yeah. So anyway, I'm very excited that you agreed to be on the Caregiver Coffee Chat
Yes.
podcast. And guys, I really appreciate you listening and watching. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify or Anchor, I'm really glad that you're here. I hope that you know that you are not alone. And if you have been listening and you do resonate with the stories that we've shared about our postpartum journeys, you're not alone. Don't feel bad. It's not your fault. Okay. Lack of information is a big culprit of the problem, and a lack
Mm-hmm.
of the intentionality with the individual situations that one experiences in the medical system is a problem too. They do streamline it. Okay, the medical system, I'm not saying is totally bad, but they do kind of have sometimes a broader one size fits all streamlined approach, and that doesn't help us at all with our
Yeah.
varying needs. So take heart. You're not
Yeah.
alone. It's not your fault. You're not a bad person. You're not a bad mom or a caregiver for being uneducated, because truthfully, right, Jackie, the information hasn't been around for people to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the problem.
Definitely.
All right, guys. Well,
Yes.
thank you for joining me for another episode of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast. If you are struggling in your motherhood and caregiving journey, please get on the wait list for my Finding Your Balance program. It is a one-on-one coaching program where you get 5 days a week, 6 hours a day of one-on-one voice message coaching with me, along with digital resources and modules and lessons to help you figure out a healthy balance that works realistically for you in your motherhood and caregiving journey. Doors open again at the end of December, but be sure to get on the wait list now. The link's in my bio, or check out my website, programsmelissamiller2011.com. And be sure to follow Jackie. Check her out on all of her socials. Check out her website. And definitely really consider working with her if you are struggling and you do need like that piece that Jackie talked about of finding a mentor or coach that can help you with your pelvic floor and post corrective exercises journey in healing your body from traumatic birth, from traumatic pregnancy. So anyway, thank you for joining. Check out the links in the description boxes below, and stay tuned for another episode of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast with me, your coach and mentor, Melissa Miller, next Monday. So Jackie, thank you so much for joining us, and
Thank you so
I
much
hope to
for
see you
having
again.
me. This was fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.